What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is going to be one of my famous tabletop gear type videos where I talk really in depth into one specific thing that we use a lot while climbing. And I've been wanting to do a video on slings for a long time now, ever since I did like my cam video or ice screws or whatever. And then I would also like to do a video on quick draws coming out too, but quick draws kind of deserve their own video. So this one I'm just going to talk about kind of like free hanging slings on our harness. And as a bonus, I'll add in some stuff with cord because I may just want to like kind of talk about where I employ a little bit here and there. They kind of fall under a little bit of that sling category, especially if you think about using them in your anchors and stuff like that. For a little bit of boundaries on this video, obviously I already said that we're going to have some cord here. It's going to be restricted to just your standard like climbing type slings, and I won't be talking about any of these sort of sling extra things like personal anchor systems or whatever. They kind of deserve their own video to begin with. I just learned these like free hanging type slings that have different uses on your harness. And the first thing I'm going to do is talk about materials and lengths, so that way we have a baseline to talk about where I employ these objects. There are ultimately 4 different sizes of slings. Some companies have some like really long ones and maybe even really short ones out there, but in reality, in climbing world, we kind of tend to use just 4 lengths of sling. And they all have multiple names, so I'm going to do my best to say all the names, but just be aware when you're researching these things that they can go by either lengths, inches, centimeters, names, colors. Now they're all being color coded. By far the most common sling you find while rock climbing is the shoulder length sling or single length sling. This is also known as a 24-inch sling or a 30 centimeter sling. So like 4 different names. The easy way to know which one is it just goes around your shoulder in a single loop like that. Especially when you're wearing a bunch of layers like I am, I can still get that around my shoulder pretty easily. So single length slings. And the reason why these are the most common ones on your harness is you fold them into an alpine draw like this. So that way when you clip, you can either use them in this smaller length or you can use them in their full-on extended length. So I have a different quick tip that talks about how to make an alpine draw. Shoulder length slings are kind of like the baseline. Every company on the market does make a sling that's half the length of this. So this would be a 12-inch sling or a 15 centimeter sling. I don't own any of them. You could use this and then make it into a quick draw and it would be like a normal quick draw length, or you could just get some sport quick draws to cover that niche of the sling. You could also argue some people may have preferences of where it could be useful and where it couldn't. I mean, the sling is a sling, so it's one of the most versatile items you carry with you, so you can find a use for it. But yeah, I just don't really use those super small slings. Instead, I like to go up. So the next sling would be something like this. Here you go, it's all folded up. So you can see how this one is longer than the single length sling by twice as much, really. So this is what we call a double length sling. That's probably the most common name for it. Also double shoulder length sling, because if you double it up, it's the exact same size as the shoulder length sling because it's, it's made to be double. 120 centimeters or 48 inches, double shoulder length sling. It all goes by those names. And this one is kind of like the start of moving into that Repel tether anchoring category right here. So there are definitely times where you would use this as an extension on a piece, but not as nearly as much as the shoulder length. And it also very much depends on the region that you're climbing. Areas where you have to extend a whole lot, you're going to have a lot more of these made up in alpine draw style. And I have a talking point that talks about how to turn this into an alpine draw. Next size up is going to be the triple length sling. Now these used to be kind of hard to find. There are only a few companies that made a sling that's a triple length. But now everyone knows that they're pretty awesome, so every company makes a version of this as well. And so the triple length sling, also known as the 180 centimeter sling, or how many of that inches would that be? It'd be 48 plus 24, 72 inch sling. This is when we're really moving into slings only being used for anchors, or for the majority of the time being used as anchors. So I often have this sling on my harness when I'm in the alpine as one of my pieces of anchor material. And then the final sling that we have is the quad sling. So obviously quad sling meaning double the double length sling, and quadruple the shoulder length sling. So I could even double it up like that, put it over my shoulder. The measurements here are 96 inches, I believe, and 240 centimeters for the sling. I often will talk in centimeters more than inches, so that's why I'm more familiar with the centimeters than the inches part of the measurement. Or often I just say quad length sling. And again, you know, some companies may make some extra long slings, like a double quad type deal, but I would kind of avoid buying those sort of things. And if you do need anchor material that long, you're better off going with something like cord or even static rope if it's way longer. So that's the baseline of the measurements right there. Again, when I'm out climbing, I probably have about 8 or 10 of these single length slings in alpine drop form. I have 1 or 2 double lengths for Repel tethers and for anchors. I oftentimes just have 1 triple length, or 1 triple length and a cord, or I may choose to use a triple length and a quad, or 2 triple lengths, or maybe 2 quads. I don't really bring 2 quads out anymore with me while rock climbing. I'll also bring at least 1 long cord, either a triple or a quad, with me while I'm out on a glacier for anything slings do out on glaciers. You know, they have a million uses. Those are the baseline lengths that we have for our slings. And I talked a little bit about where I employ them, about how many I have, and all that stuff. Moving on to materials now, there are 2 main materials that are made with slings, and that's nylon and Dyneema. Now, they're pretty easy to tell apart if you just have a little bit of practice, but this is like your quintessential nylon sling, the nylon double length right here. And you'll notice how it's fully colored, and you'll notice how it's a bit fatter. So if I grab its double length Dyneema counterpart, you can see how the Dyneema is like a third of the width of this nylon right here. And yet, if I look at the ratings here, I see 22 kilonewtons for the Dyneema and 22 kilonewtons for the nylon. So that means that they're the same strength, but one is way fatter than the other. And the reason behind that is Dyneema being a stronger fiber, you don't need as much material to reach the strength standard, as you do for nylon. Nylon, you need a lot more material to reach the standard of strength that we have for slings, which is in that 22 kilonewton range, 22, maybe 24. That's the reason why you can have a much thinner piece of material as you can with the nylon. And so these are the 2 main soft good materials. There is another one that's a bit more specific. This is really mostly being produced by Edelrid. I think maybe they have a patent or something like that. But you have this thin little cord right here, which is a bit, I don't know, you could say it's about the same size as the Dyneema right here, except it's spherical, it's round. This is made out of aramid fiber, and it's just as strong. What is it, 22? Yep, just as strong as all the other slings I have on me, but it's just a bit of different properties. The fact that it's round is kind of nice when you tie this in a knot. So this is a really nice thing to use for like a Repel tether or something. Because if you have your knot right here and you rappel on that 13 times, it's really easy to untie the knot. It has maybe about the same properties as Dyneema in wet environments, and it may be just slightly more burly. It's probably more burly than Dyneema. So I'd say that's kind of the majority of the different sling materials you'll find on the market. If any of you guys are using a different material than I named, then leave it in the comments because I'd like to check it out. But these are really the three main examples I have. Depending on the company, not all nylon has to look this fat. This is a black diamond sling. I have a different Idelrid sling. You can see also quite a bit thinner than the nylon. What Idelrid does with these slings, this is still 22 kilonewtons, is it's a lot of nylon material, but then they have aramid fiber somewhere tangled within all the weave. So they don't have to have as fat of nylon, but they still meet the same strength requirement. So there's a little bit of aramid extra fiber type stuff in this sling right here. And they make single length slings like this as well. So that's kind of cool how you can get like a nylon sling that's still in a small package. And I think one of these in like a quad or a triple length would be really cool for rock anchors, you know, like really burly rock anchors. Oh, also you get slings that are like this. These are maybe becoming slightly less common. This is made by Blue Ice, or is it Blue Water? Blue Water. Sorry, Blue Ice is a different brand. That's what makes this one right here. That's why I called it the wrong thing. But you can see how it has white and red right there. So what this is a nylon Dyneema blend. So again, it doesn't have to be as fat as those nylon slings that are pretty fat. And you still get that same strength requirement of probably 22. Oh, 27. 27? Really? This thing's really old. It's not 27 kilonewtons anymore. So yeah, you get those larger strength requirements with less materials. And so when you're shopping for slings, you kind of have the option of Dyneema, nylon, or some sort of blend like this. You'll also notice how Dyneema, another big thing that lets you know what Dyneema is, it's white. That's because the fibers of Dyneema themselves do not hold a dye. They stay white. All this blue that you see on either side is actually nylon. And more or less it's there to help give it some color coding, which is kind of nice. But also it's there to help protect the Dyneema fibers from, you know, like just getting average wear. So almost any Dyneema sling on the market, you know, Blue Ice, here's Mammut, they all have some sort of nylon sheath kind of around their more strength-related materials, just like when you make a rope or make cord or something like that. Actually, yeah, pulling out cord right here, all the color, the sheath of the cord is mostly nylon, and then you can have like the white inside, that's where the strength is. It's built just like your standard kern mantle rope. And that's how you get all the like cool cord designs out of it. This isn't really a sling, so to speak, but it looks like one, so I threw it in this video. This is made by Sterling. It's called the Hollow Block. Right there, you can read about it. This is the small one, the 13.5-inch one. And they make a longer one, but I don't really like it. I like how small these things are. This isn't really a sling, and I wouldn't use it in the sling application. It is plenty strong enough. Its MBS is 3,147 pounds. That is pretty strong, so you could use this in a pinch. The materials are really built for friction and friction resistance. So it has a high melting point of the sheath right here, and that's why they make this thing as kind of like a third-hand backup material, because you build up a lot of friction with the rubbing of soft goods on soft goods when you're repelling. And so this is made specifically to help combat that issue. I wouldn't use it as like a quick draw or anything. You want to go with like an actual sling for that. Kind of want to just add this in the video, you know, talk about that. Maybe I'll do a separate video on just Repel backup materials if you guys actually want me to do that. I also have another weird sling right here. This is made by Blue Ice, which is just like a U type thing. And you have these two little holes. So essentially what they did is they took a sling. This is a double length version. So if I took a double length and then like taped these two ends together and then taped these two ends together and then put a sheath all the way through this, that's essentially what they did with this Blue Ice. So it's still a connected loop, but they just have the two little loops right there. And then you have this really burly protection sheath all the way around the actual structural materials. So it's kind of a neat design. I don't really use it that much. I played around with it for a while, but it's a little weird. It does have some very specific uses. I think it makes kind of a decent Repel tether if you were to attach it to your harness in this configuration. So you have your belay device there, and then this is where you connect to the anchor. That's kind of neat. But it's not exactly something that I use a whole lot. It kind of reminds me of the old days where people were really into like the, what was it called? The equalette or something like that. Yeah, it just seems like it's not quite as versatile as a full-on sling. But if you are rock climbing, it's kind of could have a good use in that Repel tether. Okay, so let's talk about how many of these things I like to carry with me. When I'm rock climbing, I will carry these slings in alpine draw form, and I'll have anywhere from maybe 6 to 10 of these on my harness at any given time. I keep a whole bunch of them loaded up and ready to go. As far as hollow block, double length sling, or I could say third hand backup, double length sling, I like to keep those on their own little carabiner like this. And I have a separate video on how to bundle these cords together if you want to know how I do it that well. But that way it's always on the back of my harness as kind of my Repel kit. Most of the time nowadays, working in California, it's really easy to build trad anchors. And so I have a lot of options to keep my anchors high and tight. And I'm able to use a double length sling to connect all the pieces together. So when I'm rock climbing, I often just carry 2 double length slings on any given trad route and use those as my anchors. But if I need to have a bit wider space between my anchor pieces, or if I'm on a route that I haven't climbed before and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to get, that's when I'll pull out 1 or 2 of these triple length slings, or I could pull out 2 quads, or I could do a little bit of both, 1 quad, 1 triple. It's not uncommon for me to carry 1 triple length sling and 1 length of cord in the alpine, 18 feet of 6 mil. Those are often my anchor materials when I'm in the alpine, and I'm doing a lot more things like slinging a big horn for my anchor rather than just throwing a few cams in. If I'm planning on doing more natural anchors like trees or horns or something, then that's when I'll gravitate towards those longer slings, like nylon, Dyneema sort of stuff. I often will use Dyneema in the alpine and nylon more in the rock world. And the reason for that is Dyneema is not only lighter and packs down smaller, but it's also resistant to water. So if you're looking at this video to become an ice climber, buy some Dyneema slings just like these, especially for your alpine draws, and then Dyneema longer slings. If you're watching this video looking more to get into multi-pitch rock climbing, then I would kind of push you more towards the nylon type stuff, but with a little caveat. If I'm using a quad length sling in a multi-pitch rock climb, it's going to be Dyneema because I just want it to stay small on my harness. And that would be the same for the triple length sling. I don't even think I own nylon triples or double length slings. Even when I'm trying to build trad anchors, like 3-piece anchors with a double length sling, I prefer Dyneema because I can more easily tie this into a knot for my master point. Whereas the nylon, since it's so fat, you need more material to actually tie that knot. So I guess what that is to say is when I'm in a multi-pitch rock world, I often go with Dyneema as well. If I'm doing single pitch rock stuff, then I'll go with as burly as I can get. So for those of you who do a lot of single pitch rock, it may be more worth it to have some sort of nylon quad length sling because of the durability. And what I would do is buy this Italrid one that has the aramid fiber in it, but still nylon, only their quad version, because it's still thin, so you can very easily tie it into knots. It's easier to work with, it's more low profile in your harness, and it still gives you that burliness of the nylon and slightly thicker material. And I think, yeah, in a single pitch rock world, if you just use like quad anchors or something, then that's a really good thing to use. When I'm in single pitch rock world, I just use 22 feet of 7 mil cord. This is burly, it's really cheap, and I can build whatever anchor I want with this. And did I mention that it's burly? So this is kind of what I do when I'm doing single pitch rock stuff, is I will have this anchor with me, and it saves some wear on my more thin gear. Because I want to save this stuff for, multi-pitch rock and in the alpine. If I bring it out on every single pitch rock day I have, it'll just get eaten up super fast. If you're doing the whole thing, then it makes sense to kind of just go with the Dyneema. Like if you're in the alpine one week and then rock climbing the next week, just go with the Dyneema. But if you're only a rock climber, or you just had kids, so you know you're going to be a belay slave for the next 8 years, go with the nice fat, like nylon type stuff. Another thing, just to talk about another specific application is Repel tethers. So we use Repel tethers a lot when we're rappelling and climbing. And it is a bit nicer to go with nylon for your Repel tether. There are a few reasons. One is it is fatter. So actually, if you have a client who's like nervous about rappelling, this makes them feel a lot better than like this thin little sling right here. But also it's like easier when you tie your knot. You know, let's just say if this is your Repel tether right here, your girth hitched, ATC is right on this big knot right here. This is your attachment to the anchor. That knot will be easier to untie than on a Dyneema sling. However, me personally, I can untie knots in any of these slings, and it doesn't really take me that much time, so I don't know if that's really much of an argument, but everyone seems to care a lot about ease of untying the knots, and I've never had a problem with untying knots, really. Another great part about this is it is a little bit, just very slightly, a little bit more forgiving than Dyneema. It's going to hurt, or at worst even break the material if you manage to shock load a sling really badly, but the nylon does have a bit more stretch to it than the Dyneema. The Dyneema is kind of like a steel cable, whereas this thing is like a slightly more stretchy steel cable. Another great Repel tether is aramid fiber here. So this is more or less same size, same surface area as Dyneema, but since it's a round material, it's a lot easier to untie those knots at the end of the day if you are doing a lot of rappelling. I recommend in general, if you are going to do a big rappel route or a big route that requires a ton of rappels, like 10 or more, then, buy yourself something like the Petzl Dual Connect Adjust, which is a specific tool for doing those really long technical rappels. Or at the very least, you could use one of these for your attachment to the anchor, and then you could tie a bit more of a burly rappel anchor with this thing, something like, the full basket hitch, and then you have this full big thing just as your rappel extension. So what I'm talking about making a rappel extension with like one of these slings is kind of smaller amount of rappelling, maybe 5 pitches or less, and more in the alpine than in the rock world, where the alpine you tend to get a lot more ledges that you're hanging out on, versus in the rock world where you can literally go hanging stance to hanging stance. So yeah, if you kind of want that full list of things, I would recommend, like in the alpine, you could have your host of slings, and then you could bring something like one aramid fiber sling if you have a lot of rappels to use as your Repel tether. That would be a perfect setup. Oftentimes, if I'm not planning to rappel off the route, but I know I'll need to in an emergency situation, then I will just go to my Dyneema sling that I have. I have used Dyneema slings to rappel off of a number of alpine routes as my extension, and it's totally fine. You just have to be a bit more careful with it. For when you're just starting going into the alpine, bring yourself a burly sling like this or your aramid fiber, because the alpine rock can be very harsh on cords and slings and your rope. So you have to watch that really carefully if you're using those easier to cut materials. All right, guys, I think that's just about everything I got for you on slings. It's a bit of a smaller gear video when you compare it to my boot video or cams or whatever, but I think it was all stuff that's worth getting out there on YouTube. Just think about these things. Ultimately, it comes down to your terrain choice. So if I'm going to be in rock roll most of the time, I'm going to go with the heavier, burlier, bulkier stuff, because I don't have to walk as far. And the nice part is, it just lasts longer. My exception to that tends to be alpine draws, where I will rack them on Dyneema slings. However, with the new technology coming out there, especially with these Idelrid thin ones, you could just buy their single length version of this and use that on all your quick draws if you climb in Joshua Tree or something, or Vitavu. These really, really rough places. Having that really burly aramid style sling would be great for your alpine draws. That's the ultimate thing it comes down to. If you see yourself as an ice climber, if you see yourself as a rock climber, or an alpine climber, kind of make that your main choice and buy the slings according to what's going to work for those systems. And cord, you should probably have at least like one bundle of small cord with you, you know, and then that gives you a ton of versatility, and it's easier to leave behind than your slings because it doesn't cost as much. Hopefully that gave you guys some stuff to think about. Let me know what you do in the comments, and let me know what you think about your slings. It's funny how something so simple can also be so complicated. And I think that's the big thing I'm trying to do with some of these videos is like get people thinking beyond just the baseline understanding of equipment and where you can best employ this or that in any given situation. And beyond that, the where you shouldn't employ and where you should employ, you know, the nuances of this versus that in a situation is really what I'm trying to get at in my channel. It helps to have community involvement in that, and I like to read your comments and see what you guys think about this versus that and all that other stuff. So look forward to seeing those, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Oh, that was 60 centimeters. Oh, I messed it up. Sorry, that's a 30 centimeter shoulder length sling. I'll have to write that down at the bottom, otherwise people are going to murder me in the comments.